All right, everyone, good evening. Sorry that took a little longer to get this PowerPoint up. That's my fault. I left my iPad at home. So tonight, we are going to be talking about going from isolation to intervention. Our learning target for today, I can explain how America went from an isolationist approach to entering World War I. So we're basically going to be looking at us totally wanting to be isolationists, forgetting about every other country, which we looked at today, to how do we enter World War I. And it actually goes pretty quickly. So, isolation in America. We talked about it. Things such as the Kellogg-Briand Pact. Also, 4, 5, and 9 power treaties. Things that are designed to keep us out of war. Okay, this is just reviews. You guys really don't have to write this down. All right? To this point, in the 20s, 30s, even up to the 40s, the majority of Americans want to be isolationists. And it is not until one major event, which is Pearl Harbor, where the majority of Americans want to become involved in World War II. Okay, so it's not until Pearl Harbor that most Americans want to be involved in World War II. So, there are events leading up to Pearl Harbor that slowly but surely persuade us to lose the isolation approach and become more involved. And we're going to look at those in just a little bit. The first thing is, over in Europe, we know that Hitler is taking control in Germany. And Hitler, not only is he taking control in Germany, but he is taking control of other lands throughout Europe. We're not going to get specifically into which land he took, because you guys are going to hit that pretty heavy in either World or AP Euro next year. Okay, but Hitler is taking control of land because he wants to build his master race, which again, you guys already know. And I'm going to erase that in a little bit, so just make sure you guys get that. Okay, so Hitler is taking control of land, and he wants to build his master race. And in an effort, then, to make sure that that does not happen, in an effort to avoid going to war, European leaders, in particular British European leader Neville Chamberlain, develops a system called appeasement. Okay, and appeasement is just an approach to give in a little bit in order to avoid further conflict. So think about this as an annoying kid in line with his mom at the grocery store. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. You have mom and kid waiting in line. Kid sees a candy bar that he wants, and he tells mom that he wants a candy bar. Mom says no. Kid says yes. Mom says no. Kid says yes. Mom says no again. In an effort to get the candy bar, he whines and whines and whines and whines and whines. And what does mom ultimately do? She ultimately gives him the candy bar so he will stop complaining. And that's exactly what happens in Europe. The reason why European leaders, Britain in particular, Britain gives Hitler land so he will stop taking over land. And so it's like, fine, you can have this, but you're not going to get the next one. Okay, fine, you can have this, but that's it. Okay, you can have this piece of land, but that's the last piece of land you're getting. And eventually, what the result is that Hitler never stops. And so while this idea of appeasement sounds great, And Neville Chamberlain, Britain's prime minister during this time, is initially called a hero. We're going to see that the plan ultimately fails miserably, and Hitler starts to control most of Europe. So FDR realizes that he needs to act, so he puts into play 2 important acts to try to help out the British. The first one is cash and carry, and it's basically the idea that Britain comes over with cash, and the U.S. gives them military supplies, and then Britain carries the supplies home. All right, so we are basically getting paid by Britain to produce materials they might not be able to produce themselves. So this is our first way of trying to somewhat get involved with the war, but at the same time stay out. But what eventually happens is cash and carry no longer becomes effective because Britain doesn't have any money. So now we're going to start something called the Lend-Lease Act. And the Lend-Lease Act takes place in 1941. Cash and carry was 1939. So Lend-Lease in 1941. It's basically the idea that we will lend supplies to Britain, and they can basically just give it back to us later or pay us back later. And it's like a big IOU. And this Lend-Lease is a lot more lenient, obviously, than cash and carry. Why do we do Lend-Lease? Because we realize that Germany is becoming more and more of a threat, and we are doing whatever we can without getting it directly involved in World War II to make sure that we stay out. Now, is this isolation or intervention? Well, it's both. A lot of people in America who were isolationists felt that this was a sense of intervention. And they thought that if Hitler realized that we were giving these materials to Britain, that Hitler would eventually come after us. So more people felt it was intervention than isolation, but this was FDR's brilliant way of trying to get involved with the war, but at the same time stay out. Now, last thing we're going to talk about is what happens in Japan. Well, what's going on in Japan right now is Japan is also expanding. So exactly what Germany is doing in Europe, Japan is doing in Asia. Now, U.S., having Guam and the Philippines and Hawaii, we are not okay with that. And so we tell Japan, cut it out. Well, Japan doesn't take too kindly to that. And so we start getting into a dispute with Japan. Well, what ends up happening is that Japan starts threatening us or whatever, and we threaten right back. And so what we decide to do is we decide to cut off oil supplies to Japan. And this is crucial because without U.S. oil, Japan cannot exist. They would not be able to function militarily. So Japan's left with a choice. They can say, A, we can try to peacefully resolve things with the U.S., or B, we can basically attack the U.S. and hope to overtake their oil supply and basically eventually overtake them. The end result to that, which you guys can probably figure out, was Pearl Harbor. Okay, Pearl Harbor takes place December 7th of 1941. Okay, shortly after, about a month after Japan realizes that, makes the decision that they will not try to come to a peaceful resolution with us. All right, so that's all I got for you guys tonight. If you can explain how U.S. goes from isolation to World War II, you are good to go. Things in Europe taking place with appeasement. The big things, cash and carry, and Lend-Lease. And while we recognize that Hitler is bad and that is slowly but surely taking us into World War II, the bombing of Pearl Harbor is the big thing that gets us into World War II. And after Pearl Harbor, 100% of Americans want to go to war. And we are officially all in. Okay, that's all I got for you guys tonight. I will see some of you tomorrow. Those of you who I will not see, please be good for your sub, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a great night, guys. Bye.